Is vintage soccer your best card investment? Brett Oppenheim thinks so. We're going to find out why in today's Sports Card Investor. Hello, sports card investors, and welcome back to the Oppenheim Group office here on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. You probably have seen this place before on the hit Netflix show Selling Sunset. And Brett Oppenheim, along with his brother Jason, are the heads of this company and stars of the show. But Brett is also a massive card collector who has put in a ton of research into where he should invest in the sports card market. He's gone deep into the data and he's come out with some pretty powerful conclusions that we're going to talk about today. So first of all, Brett, welcome to the show. Super thrilled for you to take this time to talk to us and talk to our audience today.
I've heard you say that sports card investor intro many times, but having you say it like 2 feet from me is pretty cool.
Hopefully it doesn't give you nightmares at night.
No, I'm
about half the audience tells me it gives them nightmares. And,
no, it's a classic intro, man.
I appreciate it. Well, look, I'm really happy to talk to you. We had the opportunity to catch up last week, and you, I thought the conversation was fascinating because you started telling me what you were investing in card-wise and why. And the why is what I thought was really fascinating because you put in a lot of homework, a lot of data crunching, and came away with the determination that you thought soccer cards continue to be an excellent investment opportunity, and in particular vintage soccer, which right now is a very small collecting community.
Incredibly small. It's estimated maybe 600 to 700 people in the world collect vintage soccer, truly collect vintage soccer.
Right.
So it's incredibly small.
Incredibly small, potentially with a lot of upside. I know you were a collector as a kid. You got back into this a couple of years ago during the pandemic, but why did you zoom in on soccer? Like, what were your first thoughts around that?
One thing is I had been introduced to soccer because I was in Europe in 2006 and I saw what the World Cup meant to the rest of the world. So I had been introduced to it and somewhat of a casual fan, certainly of the United States men's national team and women's national team. So casual fan, it wasn't completely an unknown as it is to some people. But other than that, I'm kind of a data nerd, whether I'm buying real estate or I'm putting a significant amount of money into a collectible investment like this. I'm not going to do it without doing some serious research and looking at a lot of data and collecting my own, making some informed decisions, informed opinions.
Right.
So I dove deep into it. I can elaborate on that.
Oh, well, we're going to elaborate on that. I'm sure everyone wants to hear about this. Well, so first of all, soccer overall, it's obviously a massive sport globally. We know that.
It's the largest sport globally by far.
Of course. Yeah. And so there's always that hope that maybe card collecting will become more popular in Europe and South America and other parts of the world where soccer is king.
There's 2 ways in which soccer can get much more popular.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say soccer, soccer cards.
Yeah.
One is international collectors.
Yeah.
Which is just a massive possibility, especially with Fanatics. Absolutely massive. I mean, the list of ways that Fanatics can market soccer is ridiculous. For example, they have 80 million, I think you told me there's an 80 million person database?
80 million person database, and they estimate only around 2 million people bought or sold cards over the course of the last year.
Yeah. So that's actually great for all cards. I mean, I think they should be able to 5x that pretty easily. But you got to imagine that 50% of that is maybe 30 to 50% of that is probably soccer, and only 1/100th of 1% of cards collectors are soccer. So if they, let's say, market across all their sports fans, if they 5x the entire amount of collectors, 30 to 50% of that is going to be soccer guys. It's going to be people ordering Pulisic jerseys or Cristiano Ronaldo jerseys or Messi jerseys from Spain or from England. And if those guys get introduced to soccer cards, if Fanatics slips in a little cheap pack into that jersey, or they email them saying, hey, are you interested in buying soccer cards? Are you interested in entering this break?
Yep.
They're going to introduce it to millions of soccer fans in Europe, or South America.
Yep.
So there's that opportunity. And then I think soccer in America has a lot to grow with the World Cup in 2022, and especially, I don't know if everyone knows, we're hosting the World Cup in 2026.
Yep.
So that's the first time since 94. That's going to be massive for soccer cards.
And we were looking at a Gallup study where they do this survey, every few years, and they've done this historically going back 50 plus years, where they ask Americans what their favorite sport is. And you were showing me the data from the most recent survey and how soccer's gone from like 2% to 7%, I believe.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
In 10 years?
In 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's on this big upwards trajectory.
Baseball's trending downward significantly. Basketball and football are holding steady.
Football was even slightly down,
maybe
off
slightly
off
down.
its peaks. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe because of all the concussion stuff. Maybe
probably. And football and soccer's catching some of that.
Soccer is from 2 to 7%.
Yeah.
It's going to pass baseball. It'll probably, if it hasn't passed baseball already, because the last poll taken by Gallup was 2017, it'll pass baseball in the next 10 years. So it's going to be the third. It's already passed hockey. So it's going to be the third most popular sport in America, as far as at least this Gallup poll. And it trades at just a ridiculously small fraction to the other sports.
Yeah.
So that's if you're just going to look at it from a macro perspective without going too deep into the data, that's a pretty good place to start.
I also imagine soccer right now in America is capturing younger fans. I would
it's
guess
the youngest fan base.
Yeah, I would guess
sports.
that the demographics, just based on the friends who I know who are massive soccer nuts, and we have actually several of our employees at Sports Card Investor are really big soccer fans. Younger demo, it seems, which, from a standpoint of thinking about what an investment might do in 10 or 20 or 30 years, that's a really good demo to 100%. Be focused on.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
In fact, the MLS rights were just sold to Apple for, I think, it's $2.5 billion over 10 years, so $250 million a year. And it's going to be the first sport in America on a streaming platform, which you can only do because the demographic of soccer fans is so young. You couldn't do that with baseball, no way. I certainly wouldn't imagine. So yeah, the demographic of soccer fans is the youngest, and it's growing the most. So I mean, just from a macro level, if you're looking at investing, those are two powerful statistics.
Yeah, those are powerful statistics. So we're both in agreement that soccer has a lot of growth potential, both in America, and soccer cards has a lot of growth potential globally. But why? That doesn't necessarily mean that they're well priced today. That doesn't necessarily mean that you should buy in today at the current price levels and everything like
True,
that.
That could be factored in.
It could be factored in.
It happens to not be factored in.
It happens to not be factored in, right? At least according to all of your research that you've done on this, right?
Yeah.
And so what was some of that when you got back into cards and you started doing that exhaustive research that you talked about? What started to highlight soccer to you in that research as, hey, these cards might be underpriced?
Well, this is where we get a little bit into a deep dive in data, and I don't want to overwhelm people, so I think I'm just going to try to explain it in the abstract. But what I did is I needed a way to cross-compare not only between players, not only between modern and vintage, but between players to see where the arbitrage is, to see where the deals are. But most importantly, between sports, because at this point I said to myself, okay, if I'm going to drop a decent amount of money into this, I want to make sure I'm doing it correctly. I need to have all the data, and I want to see where the value is. Is it in basketball? Is it in football? Is it in hockey? Is it in golf? Is it in F1? Is it in soccer? And is it in vintage or pre-modern or modern or ultra-modern? Where should I put up basically all my money? And so I needed a way to compare all of that, which is really difficult. And I came up with an algorithm that I created for myself that I don't need to get into all the nitty gritty on, but it essentially, to simplify it, is I wanted to figure out the price of the 100th best card of any player, right? So let's say there's 200, I know there's let's say there's about 300 Michael Jordan PSA 10s.
Yeah, a little over 300.
So
86 Fleer.
Yeah, in vintage it's easy because there's typically one or two, hopefully just one real rookie card. In ultra modern it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
I did it with Mbappe just to get an idea of where the ultra modern pricing is, but I couldn't do it with everybody because it took me about 10 hours just to do Mbappe to figure out what his 100th best card was.
Yeah, because there's so many different sets, so many different parallels, right?
Man,
so like
brutal.
how does the 1 of 1 from this set compare to the 1 out of 5 from this set, compare to the 1 out of 10 from this set?
And then the grading.
And then grading too influences.
Yeah, so like
sure.
is a PSA 9 out of 9, a PSA 10 out of 99 better than a PSA 10 out of, is a PSA 9 out of 25 better than a PSA 10 out of 99?
Right, and when you say his 100th best card, you don't mean like, select counts as one card and tops counts.
No, I mean his 100th most valuable rookie
his
card.
100th most valuable card. So it could be, in the case of 86 Fleer Michael Jordan, that 100th card is his 1986 Fleer PSA 10 because there's about 300 in existence.
There's 300.
So if you go down to card number 100, that's going to be one of them.
Yeah. What I do is I take the average. So the 150th best card of Michael Jordan, let's say it's trading at $250,000 right
Yep.
now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the 150th best card is worth, because there's 310s, and you have to assume that it's the average of a PSA 10. Whatever a PSA 10 is, the average PSA 10. You're not going to assume it's the 10th best PSA 10 out of 300 or the 290th best. Just assume it's the average, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, a Michael Jordan rookie card is, let's say, his 150th best rookie card is worth $250,000.
Yep.
So then you calculate, okay, what's his 100th? And that's just a simple math equation. And his 100th is probably worth somewhere around, I don't know, 300,000 or something, because you got to add about 33% or whatever it is, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So then you know so Michael Jordan is trading at 300,000 for his 100th best card. What is LeBron James trading at? What is Diego Maradona trading at? So I did that across all sports. And then I realized that certain sports were trading at incredibly high ratios compared to other sports. So you can, if you do that enough across sports and you do the top 20 players of each sport, then you can say, okay, soccer is trading at this compared to baseball, compared to football, compared to basketball.
So by looking at an equal card, from key rookies in key sports, an equal level of card,
like the top 5 players,
you can then make comparisons across
like
sports.
The 20th player, the 10th, across all sports.
Yep.
And then you can really see, and I don't know how many people have done this, but you can really see how sports are selling compared to one another.
Sure.
Which is just a huge data point if you're going to be investing in.
And I would expect soccer to be lower than the other sports because it doesn't have as...
Yeah, I was going to quiz you on where you think soccer versus F1 versus golf versus hockey versus basketball, baseball, and football.
Oh, let's do this. Let's do the quiz. Okay, so obviously...
And the audience should probably guess kind of on their own as you
they should guess as I guess. I would guess soccer to be obviously lower in terms of multiple because it doesn't have as many fans, there aren't as many collectors, but how much lower in terms of multiple is an interesting question, and I'm guessing that those multiples might be outrageously high comparing soccer to some of the other. But let's do this. So all right, so let's do the data.
Let's start with let's make soccer the baseline.
Okay, so soccer is the baseline.
Let's say that's a 1.
Okay.
So where's hockey?
Hockey compared to soccer. So the average hockey card value, average hockey card value of a key rookie, his 100th card, compared to the average soccer card
of equivalent
value.
players.
Equivalent players.
Yeah, exactly.
Equivalent players.
Yeah. So for hockey, we'll do Gretzky versus Messi.
Right.
And then the 5th best player, like Messier versus Maradona,
right.
On and on.
Okay.
And you take the aggregate of that and you compare the pricing.
All right, so hockey has a big collector group in Canada, very passionate, has been collecting hockey cards for many years. You see really high sales of key cards like Gretzky and Bobby Orr. So I definitely think hockey's higher than soccer. I'm going to say, but in terms of the number of people watching them and everything in the U.S., it's actually pretty equal. Or soccer's actually just past hockey, but hockey's been
it's
much
somewhat
more
equal.
I'm going to say hockey's 3 to 4x soccer. We'll see what the audience think. What do you think hockey is compared to soccer in terms of comparison of card prices? I'm going 3 to 4x.
That's a pretty good guess, and I would imagine your level of sophistication in your guesses is going to be a lot better than most collectors and investors in sports cards. But it's about, according to my data, about 8x.
Wow. Okay. So hockey actually is quite a bit higher than soccer.
8x. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you look at the other data, for example, the NHL media rights is about equivalent to all of the soccer media rights, MLS plus La Liga plus Premier League in the U.S. So they're about equivalent.
Yeah.
As far as the Gallup poll on where people say that their favorite sport to watch is, I think soccer is now higher than hockey.
Okay.
And of course, the ability for soccer to card collecting to grow internationally compared to hockey is 100x.
Yeah.
So you take all that into consideration, and then you realize that hockey cards are trading at 8 times the value of soccer. You're not going to probably, unless if you really love hockey, but if you're looking at it objectively, you're probably not going to put your money in hockey before you do soccer.
Interesting.
At least that's where the conclusion I came to.
Sure.
So now let's do golf.
Okay.
Want to go through all the sports, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's do it. Let's do it. We'll have the audience guess alongside me. So, there's Brad. Can you grab the door, Charles?
Yeah. What's up, Brad? What's up? Come say hi. Come say hi, bro.
What's up, man?
Ask out Amanza. Is she here?
We're filming. Jump in and say what's up. I actually met Brad at Starbucks across the street. I recognized him from his from his channel.
Look at that.
So Brett was
The
fanboying
net-
all over me. It was cool.
The Netflix star recognizes the sports card content creator, huh?
And then I also learned that Brett's condo overlooks that Starbucks, so there's a binoculars, like set of binoculars there.
Yeah,
so
I just creep on Brad.
It's like there, he's going. I gotta go down and ask him about cards.
There you go.
Very cool.
Good to see you, bro.
Yeah, you too.
All right, so we just
Let's have Brad guess.
Yeah, we just had a special guest, Brad, the comeback card investor, join us here. So Brad, you can join in on this as well. We talked about some of this the other day, but we're doing the quiz in terms of the ratios, and we're having the audience guess as well.
You know, the sport to sport.
Okay. So yeah, the super analytical
Yeah.
Data you put together.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Right,
where are you
hold on,
guys
we
at
gotta
on
get-
it?
let's get that mic
for
pack
free.
down on you.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I'll
Are you
put
gonna
this
need
on
to pop on the other camera then?
Okay, so let's do golf.
So there's
Not all of these are going to necessarily shock you.
Yeah, there's so few golf cards just in general. There's obviously a couple of really big Tiger Woods cards. Outside of that, there's not a lot of big
and
golf
I did
cards.
I did a lot of vintage. In fact, I did mostly vintage in my
Okay.
analysis. I should disclose that. Although I have noticed that ultra modern and modern trade at similar ratios to vintage across all sports. So most of this data is also works with modern and ultra modern. But most of my analysis was vintage because it's so much easier to get the data.
Yeah.
It doesn't fluctuate as much.
I mean, I would
either.
think golf would actually be less than soccer. I would put golf below soccer, but if soccer is a 1x baseline, I'd say golf is no more than 1x, so it's no more than equal to soccer, probably less.
Yeah, I mean, you hear more about soccer cards than
Sure.
golf cards. I mean, so
You see soccer cards more often out there.
Right. So even though like throwing the sports side or the sports size out of the equation, like hockey is way bigger than soccer in terms of the collector side. I don't hear much about golf period in terms of cards.
You guys
So-
are both right. It's pretty equivalent.
Yeah, pretty
And
equivalent
there's not
to
so
soccer.
much data in golf, as you
Right.
said. So my best guess is it's pretty equivalent.
Okay.
Let's do F1. We'll start with Zelda. We'll start with the smaller sports, and then we'll go to the big
nasty.
boys. So yeah, we'll
So
do
F1. We're gonna do F1.
Yeah.
So F1 really obviously came on the scene more so recently.
But let me do a
but-
small
but-
caveat. I apologize. This is mostly vintage F1.
Okay.
Some of the ultra-modern F1, this is one of the sports where the pricing in ultra-modern has gotten out of whack compared to vintage F1. So it's more vintage F1
Okay.
versus vintage.
I mean, okay.
Soccer.
Well, vintage F1 versus vintage soccer. I mean, neither are huge markets compared to other sports. I would put. I mean, I don't know. I'd put F1 around a 1x soccer as well.
It's the same size, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, vintage F1.
Michael Schumacher all the way down.
See, that's the only name I've
Senna.
ever heard.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would have to say vintage soccer, or the cards that you're looking at in using this for. I would say the soccer. You're saying that's the baseline. Soccer's
Yeah.
so it can't be less. So as in F1 can't
No,
be
it
less
can be
than
less.
soccer. Oh,
I'm
can
just
it?
giving soccer a 1 so we can compare everything to
Okay.
it.
I mean, my guess would be vintage Formula One would be even less than soccer.
It's like half of soccer.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
also pretty equivalent.
Pretty equivalent.
Yeah,
So
golf, F1, and soccer. And again, there's not incredible amount of data in vintage F1 and vintage golf, but it seems to be pretty equivalent to vintage soccer.
Okay.
Now, the only sport where I see a huge dichotomy between pricing and ultra modern and vintage is F1.
Okay.
And that's because of the Netflix series and because of the 2020 Topps
Yeah.
Chrome just coming out. And I think that is a little bit of an issue with ultra modern. I would kind of warn ultra modern F1 collectors, because if you can get a Michael Schumacher PSA 10, of which there's only 100, for $1,000, and he's got the 7 F1 titles, so does Lewis Hamilton, and Lewis Hamilton just sold for $1 million. Granted, it was a 1 of 1, but the 50th best Michael Schumacher is going to trade for like $1,000 or $2,000, and the 50th best Lewis Hamilton is going to be like $20,000. That doesn't make sense at all. And I've seen that all of ultramodern has a bit of a problem with those ratios, but F1 in particular.
Interesting.
Just a quick warning, in my opinion, to any time that sports cards are just introduced to a sport, like F1, there's just going to be a massive bubble for a little while, for a few years.
We've seen it. We've seen it. Yeah, we've seen it time and time again. Yeah.
But so they're all about 1. Now let's go to the big boys.
Okay.
Let's go to football.
Okay. So, I mean, I would think.
And I'm gonna remind
okay, so
myself-
since we're doing comparisons of vintage cards.
Don't look at this.
Football is going to be lower than baseball or basketball since we're talking about vintage cards.
It's mostly vintage, but again, in all sports, probably except for F1, the ratios stay pretty much the same. So the ratio between vintage soccer and vintage football is going to be pretty similar between modern soccer and modern football.
But it is going to be significantly more. Football is going to be significantly more. I mean, you got tons of people chasing the '86 Jerry Rice or the Walter Payton rookie or going back older than that,
Montana,
Jim Brown.
Jim
all
Brown.
all those types of cards are super popular. Can pop off for tons of money. So I'm going to say football is 16 to 18x. I'm going to say it's 16 to 18x soccer. What do you think, Brad?
I'll go 20x.
Okay.
Okay, these are good guesses. 15.
15. Okay.
15x.
Okay.
Yeah. And football, I went all the way up to like 1988 or something like that.
So you got a lot of those key 80s
because there's only
cards.
one Jerry Rice rookie, so it's pretty easy to get that data.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 15x soccer.
Okay. Which, from a fan support in the U.S. at this moment makes some sense. Like, football is the number one watch sport in the U.S. For the cards to be trading at 15x.
Does it surprise you?
Makes sense to me in the U.S. Now, internationally, obviously, completely different story.
Yeah, it's not. I wouldn't say that's shocking in the U.S. I agree, but it's a little bit odd to me that it's only twice hockey. Because remember, soccer's a 1, hockey's an 8, football's a 15, so it's really only twice hockey.
Yeah.
So hockey surprises me in the strength.
The collector base in Canada is so passionate about hockey cards.
That must be what it is.
There's so many longtime collectors in Canada of hockey cards.
The thing that I always think about is the rise of fantasy football and how people love to get into that and that game, that gambling aspect as well, and how I see that as an opportunity for football to really go up even higher if it's only 2x hockey, because if the collector base in Canada or North America is so dedicated to hockey and they're so passionate, what would it take for that level of interest to reach football and these other sports? Because if you have a collector base that's that passionate about football with the size of the sport compared to hockey, then it should be 50x.
Yeah.
It should be 50x hockey.
Yeah. That's fair.
Well, I would think it'd be more than 2x hockey. That's for sure.
2x hockey. I'm surprised it's not a little more, but
so
all right. So
15x
football 15.
soccer.
Football's 15. Okay.
So let's remember soccer's the baseline of 1. So football's traded at 15x. Let's do basketball.
So basketball's gonna be a little more. I don't think it's gonna be as much as baseball because vintage baseball, gets all the attention with the Aarons and Mantles and Mays and Babe Ruths and all those guys, right?
Baseball.
But basketball has certainly gotten a lot more attention vintage-wise in the last few years. There are a lot of vintage basketball collectors. It's probably a little more than football. I'm going to say vintage basketball is 20 to 25x. If football's 15, I'll go 20 to 25 for basketball.
Okay.
I'll go 40.
Okay, so you think it's more. Mm-hmm. By the way, what do you guys think out there? What do you think?
I actually would have thought, I kind of would have agreed with Brad just because there's so much hype around basketball.
Modern basketball, for sure.
Yeah, but I would have thought that would have equated to vintage.
Okay.
It really didn't. It's 25x.
Okay.
So pretty much along the lines of what you guessed. It actually was lower. In fact, when I did all my analysis, I thought that vintage soccer was the best investment, followed by vintage basketball.
Interesting.
But since then, because like a Wilt Chamberlain rookie was so inexpensive compared to LeBron James or Michael Jordan or anyone for that matter.
And so much more.
But vintage basketball has gone up a decent amount.
It has.
I did my analysis quite a while ago. So,
so the ratio could actually be higher today.
Well, no, I've kept it pretty updated. It's
Okay.
still around 25. At that time, I just remember it being surprisingly low.
Okay.
So your guess was pretty good. 25x soccer, which is about 3x hockey and about almost twice football, to give it all comparisons. Let's do baseball, which, like you said, is the big daddy of where all the money goes in vintage. In all cards, actually.
Baseball's definitely going to be a lot
which is ironic because it's a dwindling sport as far as fan base in America. So it's a little bit ironic that that's where all the money goes in cards. And you have to ask yourself, is that going to be 20 years from now? Are people going to be caring about Hank Aaron more than Wilt Chamberlain? I don't know.
It's a fair question.
Yeah. And
what do you think? What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't care to have a Mickey Mantle or a Honus Wagner or a Babe Ruth because even though they're iconic cards in the hobby, it means nothing to me. So
And how old are you?
I'm 35.
I think, and you're 40.
You're 44,
43.
43.
I'm 45. I think our generation is the last generation to care a lot about vintage baseball.
Yeah.
My bro throws some money into vintage baseball. I don't mind. I wouldn't mind having a Mickey Mantle, but I think our kids. I mean, your kids, are they into baseball?
No, not at all.
Yeah. So
Not at
this
all.
would be my concern. Dropping a bunch of money into baseball.
They're
players.
into soccer and they're into football.
Yeah.
And basketball. They like basketball
soccer,
too.
Football, and basketball.
Soccer, football, and basketball.
But primarily, I would think soccer and basketball.
Yeah.
Are where I would put my money as
Yeah.
far as potential international growth and the younger generation.
Yeah. No, that's
And
fair.
you got to think long term.
Some of those cards will, I think, forever have a lot of value because they'll be looked at as historical artifacts. Like I think the 52 Mantle, 200 years from now, people will still want that card because it's a historical artifact the same way that they want a Ben Franklin signature today.
But
However,
do they need a PSA 8 Sandy Koufax?
Yeah, well, that's the
Nolan
thing.
Ryan
It's the
PSA
next
9.
level down.
Yeah, or
it's
Pete
your
Rose.
Carl Yastrzemski or your Warren Spahn.
Ricky Henderson for $150,000.
Well, yeah, Ricky Henderson won't make any sense at all in 100 years or 200 years. It won't, right? So, I mean, that's a great point, you know. So
that would be my concern in baseball more than. Well, let's do the ratio. Guess the ratio of baseball versus
40
versus soccer.
I'll go 40.
Okay.
Yeah, based on just the few cards that are worth so much right now in vintage baseball, I'd go 50.
Okay.
It's 75.
Oh, wow.
Vintage baseball
75.
trades at 75 times vintage soccer, 3 times basketball, and about 5 times football.
Wow.
And about 10 times, 9 times
Wow.
hockey. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a little bit unnerving if all your money, in my opinion, is in baseball. Is it going to be 75 times soccer in 20 years? And a lot of people are thinking, well, who gives a shit about 20 years? I'm going to sell my cards in 18 months. But if someone came to me and said, I'm looking for a house, I don't care what it's worth in 20 years, that would concern me.
Sure.
Because people are eventually going to figure out what they're going to value the 20-year play in a year, right? So eventually everyone's going to catch on to this, and it's going to affect the value immediately. You know, you don't want to hold an asset that's not going to be worth anything in 20 years, thinking that no one's going to figure that out. That's not a great investment play.
Yeah.
So I would be very concerned about baseball collecting, baseball card collecting.
You know, another aspect
long term.
in terms of the growth of the sport too, I never grew up watching baseball, and the only people I know that watch baseball, their parents played or watched, and then that was something they shared with their parents, and so they got into it. And I believe now, with the growth of soccer here in the U.S., there's going to be a generation of people that are watching soccer now, or their parents did last 10 years, and now they're entering watching soccer on their own and being a fan the same way that the father and the mother were watching football, or excuse me, soccer with them as a kid. But before, you didn't really have that here in America, where you had your parents that watched it and introduced
Soccer,
you to it.
none of that.
Yeah, so you had that with baseball, you had that with football for sure. Basketball, yeah, I'm sure. But soccer is a sport where it might just take an extra, couple of years before the kids become really excited because they used to watch it with their parents, or they're now parents themselves and they get to introduce it to their children.
Or the World Cup introduces it to them.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw the graph. Soccer was non-existent on that Gallup poll.
Yeah.
10 years
if you go
ago,
back to
20 years ago.
it was almost not
basically
even there.
didn't exist.
Correct.
It was like volleyball.
Correct.
Which I actually love volleyball, but it's just non-existent as far as on people's radar to watch. So so just to recap, we got soccer at 1, along with basically golf and F1. Then you have hockey at 8, football at about 15, and by 15 I mean it trades at 15 times soccer. Soccer's the baseline of 1. Football is at 25, and baseball is about 75. So
basketball's at 25.
Sorry, basketball's at 25.
Baseball's at 75. Incredible.
So if you had all that data, where would you, and you see the trend lines on the Gallup polls and everything, where would you put your money? I mean, that's the question.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you have to be wary about the ones that are trading at multiples, especially with sports that may be declining, right? So, I mean, I think based on that data, baseball's out, in terms of vintage baseball investment. I think that, maybe there's still some opportunity in basketball. I still think there's some opportunity at football and 15X as well. But I completely get soccer, because if you say out of all of those that you just mentioned, and keeping the ratios in mind, which of those is the combination of highest potential growth over the next 10 to 20 years of collectors, combined with where it is today and the price ratios? I mean, soccer absolutely.
Combined with the Fanatics fan database.
Yeah. And soccer absolutely stands out amongst that whole group as like, wow, that makes a ton of sense.
And then vintage soccer even more, because it's just such a small buyer pool. So just from a data perspective, and I know a lot of people collect what they love, and here's another thing that I want to take issue with. the whole collecting what you love theory. It sounds nice, but if someone came to me as a real estate agent, and I'm their real estate agent, and they're my buyer, and they said, I want to start collecting homes next to railroad tracks because I just love homes next to railroad tracks. I wouldn't be like, cool, collect what you love. Buy what you love.
Right.
I would not let them do it. I'd be like, no, that's stupid.
Right.
I don't care what you love. That's stupid. And I'm not
Well,
gonna
if you're
let you
looking
do
at it for investment, right? Like some
Yeah,
people,
but
some people collect without thinking about the money side. Look,
You know, but who
own.
does- how many people do not give a shit about money?
There, you know what? Well, there's a fair amount of, like, I own the you know, maybe the world's largest Tim Tebow collection of cards, and I promise
That's
you,
awesome.
I promise you,
awesome. But how
I am
much-
not
but how
doing
much
that
are
for
those?
money.
And
But I'm
Lonzo-
also
You're not
Lonzo
dropping
Ball as
100
well,
grand into
though,
that,
no,
right?
I'm not. 'Cause
Lonzo Ball still or no?
I sadly, yes.
He has more
I
of a
probably,
future. He has more of a future.
Sadly, I own a lot of Lonzo
I
Ball
would
cards.
rather own Lonzo Ball than Tim Tebow.
But
And that's fine.
but-
Drop a few grand, whatever it is.
Right, but
I mean,
you're
we're
right.
talking about
But
people that are putting a decent amount of their
Yeah.
net worth into collectibles.
Yeah.
Don't just collect what you love. Collect what is a good investment that also brings you happiness.
Sure.
There has to be a balance.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
there's the discretionary income for ripping wax, which to me is the same as collecting what you love. But that's out of that bucket. That's out
Yeah,
of
but
that account, but not the.
Don't
this
rip
is an
wax with money
investment.
that you care about. You know, I
Right.
mean, I rip wax for fun, but Jesus, that's not a good investment.
Yeah.
So I take issue with the fundamental premise of collecting what you love, unless if it's just such an insignificant amount of your net worth that fine. But if you're putting 5-10% of your net worth into collectibles, don't just collect what you love. Collect what makes sense and brings you happiness. There's that balance. you
Yeah.
know?
And for you, that's vintage soccer.
Yeah, I happen to like soccer. So if you hate soccer, don't collect vintage soccer. But if if it interests you and you want to make a good investment and collect what you like or love, I would suggest it.
Yeah. Cool. What do you think? Are you gonna get into vintage soccer, Brad?
Not at all, because I don't like it at all. However, one thing that popped in my mind was UFC is not on there. And there's actually some cards of some of the earlier fighters that I go, you know what, I wonder if vintage, which could be 1993
Right.
UFC,
Interesting.
will have a future because
Sure.
UFC has blown up. It's international.
Yeah.
Fanatics, if they get into UFC and they want to blow it up, well, hey, what about Chuck Liddell? What about Tito Ortiz?
I'm
what about
friends
Ken
with
Shamrock?
Chuck Liddell.
I saw him at your party, man.
Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah.
right, yeah.
That's
Like,
probably not a bad play. And I think vintage F1 is an interesting
Yeah.
play. I would pick up Michael Schumacher's all day long.
Yeah.
And
Maybe
I think,
tennis?
I think
Tennis
tennis
is more
trades
fun
at
than baseball.
International
Yeah,
sport.
tennis isn't bad. I think.
And then they're
Netflix
doing the
is coming out.
documentary.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, to a degree, golf. I mean, it's down there with soccer, but now you've got, with
It's so
they're-
dominated by Tiger Woods, though.
It is.
After
You're right.
Tiger Woods, it's
it
not
falls
much of a
off
hobby.
quickly. It falls
Yeah.
off quickly. It really does.
And he
Yeah.
trades at a pretty high ratio.
Yeah.
I would say, and I agree, football and basketball have some room to grow, especially vintage. And I don't know if you want me to get into the vintage versus ultra modern. But
Let's get into it. Let's
All
get
right.
into it.
So I also did these ratios on vintage versus ultra modern to see if I should go. And because let's be honest, I mean, let me grab these. Ultra modern is hard to not like, right?
they're
It is
shiny.
like
They're
a
beautiful.
drug. I mean, that is such a good looking.
Look at that.
It's such a good looking card.
They're beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous, and so I get the draw of ultra modern. It's really hard for me not to spend money on ultra modern cards. I just have to stare at the data to make myself not buy ultra modern. But the data is pretty powerful when it comes to the difference between vintage and ultra modern. And what I think people need to realize is that there needs to be an understanding between what an ultra modern player's rookie card, 100th best rookie card trades at, versus what an equivalent player in vintage of his caliber trades at. There has to be an understanding of those ratios. Just have to be pretty.
And the ratios are way off. They
Sorry.
got to be way off.
I got
I mean,
stuck in.
anecdotally, I know that's got to be way off.
Man, it's pretty staggering. So I'll give you an example because it's so hard to find a 100th best rookie card of an ultra modern card because there's 2,000, Zion Williamson rookie cards.
There
How do
are.
you find a
2019 Zion Williamson
It's
rookie
stupid.
cards.
So what I did is I chose Mbappe because his rookie cards in 2017. He's the face of the ultra modern soccer hobby, and it's doable to find his 100th best card and his 1,000th best card, which is what I did. When I say doable, it probably took me 10 hours. But I figured out, okay, I'm gonna do one guy, and it's gonna give me an idea of where ultra modern is trading at. Not just in soccer, but all sports have this problem. In fact, it's probably worse in other sports. So Mbappe trades at a ratio of about, for his 100th best card, about a 25 ratio, which means it's $25,000 for his 100th best card. and his 1300th best card trades at about a 60 ratio, which I know is getting a little bit complicated. But the problem is in ultra modern is people can't figure out, like they'll buy a 1 of 99 select Mbappe rookie in a PSA 10, of which there's only 10 graded at 1 of 99. And they're thinking, that's got to be like his 100th best card. It's a PSA 10 out of 99 in select, one of his best rookie cards. It turns out that card in the PSA 10 is about his 1300th best card, which took me about 10 hours of data to find out. But people aren't thinking about that. They think 1 of 99 PSA 10. You don't think 1300th best rookie card. And when they find out that it is, if anybody ever is able to put all this data out there, which would be pretty difficult, but if it ever gets out there, which I imagine at some point somebody's going to do this, I think Ultramodern is going to have a huge problem. So to give you an example of where these ratios are from Mbappe, let's say its 100th best rookie card trades at about a 25. That's where Messi's 100th best rookie card is, and he's 2004. Messi is the greatest soccer player probably of all time. Mbappe has not won a Ballon d'Or. Messi has 7. This would be like comparing Luka and Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
You know? In fact, Luka's probably done.
It's a good comparison.
I'd say Luka and Mbappe.
MVP to,
no
a whole bunch of MVPs.
Well, he has a World Cup. Mbappe has a World Cup.
Right.
But it's probably pretty much Luka and Michael Jordan.
It would have been Tatum if he had actually won the title this year, comparing him to LeBron. That would have been the comparison.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, something like
it
that.
makes no sense.
Right.
Yet their 100th rookie card is trading at almost the exact same.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense at all. And I don't care if people, but everybody knows Mbappe and not as many people know Messi. Or even if you take it back
and that's not even true.
Let's take it back to Pele, though.
Sure.
Pele trades at about the same as Messi.
Okay.
And Mbappe. So let's just use a little bit of common sense here. Pele trades at the same as Messi.
Right.
Okay, I can buy that.
The greatest player of the century, but
Pele,
Messi might be that for this century.
Yeah, Pele was considered the greatest athlete of the century by Time Magazine, across all sports. And Messi is probably the greatest player of our generation.
Yeah.
I can live with them trading at similar ratios. But Mbappe trading at the exact same. Haaland trades at like a quarter of Pele and a quarter of Messi. His chance of being, it doesn't make sense as far as ultra-modern pricing. And I think long-term people are going to figure this out. It might be a year from now. It might be 5 years from now. But I wouldn't want to be holding on to $100,000 worth of Messi cards.
Well, and I think they're already figuring it out to a degree. I mean, you've seen.
Yeah, but it's got a long way to go.
It probably does.
These ratios I'm giving you are now. These ratios were worse a year ago.
Yeah, because ultra-modern has fallen off more heavily than vintage over the course
I did this
of the last
analysis
year,
a month ago.
Yeah.
If I had done it a year ago, I'd say Mbappe probably would have been trading at 3 times Messi.
Yeah.
Now he's back to Messi numbers.
Right.
But he should be a 10th of Messi.
Yeah.
And I hate to give that analysis to people because it's a little bit scary, but I think unfortunately ultra-modern has got still a long ways to go. And then the good news for the hobby is once it gets to that level, wax prices will drop. And I think Fanatics is going to do a great job increasing the buyer pool.
Yeah.
And then the future will be bright.
Yeah.
But we got to get through this pain of ultra-modern.
You got to get to a stable baseline.
Yeah. And then it's going to be just a beautiful situation with Fanatics, I think.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
interesting days ahead.
Not all good news, but there's a lot of data for you, and you can make your own informed decisions.
This has been fascinating, and if you, by the way, if you're looking for real estate in the Los Angeles area,
yeah, that too. Call me.
Luxury.
The luxury real estate, please. The amount of thought that Brett puts into card investing clearly would make you confident in using this guy for your real estate investment here in Los Angeles as well. So
I use this analysis with all of my investments, and I do it for my clients' investments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, man.
It's a pleasure, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was fun.
This is a lot of fun. Appreciate you coming on the show and talking about all this. And I'm sure we're going to get a lot of interesting comments. So look forward to reading all of those. Appreciate it. Thanks for popping in. Thanks for crashing the party.
Absolutely. Photo bombing is my thing.
Awesome, guys. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and we'll comment. Let us know what you think, and we'll see you back soon with our next episode. Take care.